I'm Michael DeLeon. You're watching the Sports Roundtable powered by ProjectSpurs.com, and we are all over the Spurs. Welcome to the Roundtable. We've got a pretty big panel with us today. We've got Paul Garcia alongside me. He's our lead writer over there at Project Spurs. We've got Humby, the Thiago Splitter hater.
It's not a hater. I'm just the only one who watches him play basketball, apparently.
Okay. Me and Paul, I don't know what we've been doing all season.
Where is Trevor when you need him to go one-on-one with Humby?
He's probably looking deeply into his Thiago Splitter poster right now, and
trying to trade Tony Parker once again.
Yeah, and trying to trade Tony.
That's Jeff Garcia from New York right now over the phone, our co-founder. And, well, playoffs start tomorrow. We've been kind of waiting for this for a long time. And as part of our coverage for the series preview on Project Spurs, we're going to run down a few of the things to watch out for, some of the matchups and things like that. But first thing we want to talk about is the season review. And this team did win 50 games, went on 3, double-digit runs. Paul, you've been there right with me covering games all year, and I know you had the article on Project Spurs. What did you think about the Spurs this year and what they've done?
It was like I said in the article, it was a very spectacular season regardless. To have 3 double-digit winning streaks and only lose more than 2 games in a row was pretty significant in a lockout season where it was very short and a lot of things were rushed and things like that. A lot of those 3 back-to-backs, I mean, I know they swept 2 of them. Yeah. And one thing that I hinted on in that article was that after that Dallas loss in overtime on January 29th, when Coach Pop elected to use the subs to get them to overtime and they eventually failed and lost, it kind of built more cohesiveness and a camaraderie in that locker room. And from that point, the Spurs were 12-9 before that, and after that game, they ended up finishing the season 38-7. And I think that had a lot. That really even after acquiring Jackson and Mills and
that would have been a huge move.
Millsap would have been huge.
Yeah, and we would not be worried about the Jazz's size right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's definitely so. Yeah, even after making that move for those last 3 players, the end. I mean, April they went 13-2 with the full healthy lineup. It's just
it was crazy. Somebody was asking me a few weeks ago. I heard that the Spurs record, towards the end of the day, they've only lost 5 games in the last 2 months. So it's just like, okay, let me check that out real quick. And I was like, wow, that is actually the case. They had that wake-up call with Dallas. They had a wake-up call with the first game with the Lakers in that blowout. And they've been, doing so well this year. It's such a different team, such a deep team now. Hubby, the changes they made, at the trade deadline and thereafter, do you think that has been the biggest difference maker to this team this year?
As far as the entire season, I think you look at it and you see really the development of a lot of the younger guys, specifically a Danny Green. You look at him, and it's funny that you were pointing at the Dallas game because that was basically Danny's big coming out party where Pop said, you know what, I'm going to trust you enough to not only play these big-time minutes and we're going to stick with you, and he was kind of the focal point of the offense at that point, but then they had him take the last shot of the game, and he made it. It was a 1/10 of a second late, but the point was that they trusted him enough. They put him in the position to make a big shot against a big-time rival at that point, and ever since then, you could see the confidence within him grow, and now he's a guy who you can see believes in himself and knows that when he's on the court, he not only belongs, but he's one of the better players there.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree in that development with Danny Green as well was a huge thing and a huge kind of underlying story. Jeff, you kind of have a bit of an outsider's viewpoint because you're in New York and Knicks land and get to hear all about the Knicks up there. And
don't remind me about that.
Linsanity.
Exactly. You had to go through Linsanity. We also saw Tony Parker light up Linsanity in that game. But what has your viewpoint been like so far this year and watching the Spurs?
Well, first of all, Mike, I thought the Spurs didn't have an impressive season according to Dallas Mavericks' Mark Cuban. Yeah. He said no team in the NBA was impressive this season, but I guess all of us here beg to differ. But I'm going to take a different angle on this, looking back at the Spurs season. I'm kind of really disappointed in James Anderson. I really thought this season would be his coming out season. Maybe get a lot more minutes than he did last season. Obviously, it was due to injury. But when he did get the minutes, he didn't really pan out. Even in blowout games and even when Pop benched a few players that allowed James Anderson to get in and play some ball, wasn't very impressive at all. I mean, you take a look at maybe the Portland game. You could even look at more recent games, even the Warriors game. He got a lot of minutes and just did not look like he was fitting in. I don't know what's going to happen with him next season. Could he be trade bait? He really fell out of the system, fell out of the rotation. So when I look back at the Spurs season, I look at how my hopes were high for Anderson, and then it was a major letdown. And I think it's pretty much for a lot of Spurs fans.
Yeah, I think it was. And the thing is that the Anderson's failure kind of led to Danny Green's success because Anderson was given the starting role when Manu went down in that Golden State game. I think Danny Green scored 8 points, got a lot of minutes, and then the Dallas game we talked about. So that was one negative, and a whole list of positives as well. But Anderson is definitely, there's a lot of questions there. We saw him do very well in that Golden State game at the end of the season, but didn't do
19,
much beyond
19
that.
points against the D-League Warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty impressive.
Now, didn't they end up declining his option for next season? So he could not be on the roster next year.
Yeah, he may not be.
And I think
it looks like the writing is on the wall, though.
One of the things that I really found interesting was after his option got declined, he would still get some chances, get some minutes, and you could tell he asked for the trade, and they were trying to showcase him a little bit, and when he got in, you could just see him gripping. So I think he's going to be the kind of guy where he might end up getting away, but a change of address for him is going to be really beneficial.
Yeah, I think he needs a lot more minutes and more opportunities. But let's go ahead and get on into this series. It starts tomorrow at noon here in San Antonio against the Utah Jazz, and kind of break down these matchups of this team. What's this team all about? And so we're going to go first to the point guard matchup, and that's Tony Parker against Devin Harris. And Jeff, what do you have to say on this matchup and who has the edge?
Oh, Devin Harris and Tony Parker matching up yet again in the postseason. Spurs fans all remember Devin Harris, how he used to pretty much get the better of Tony Parker back when Devin was playing with the Mavericks, in particular the 2006 playoffs. But that was then, this is now. This is not the same Tony Parker he faced. That Tony Parker was younger. That Tony Parker wasn't the complete player we saw him today. And let's not forget, back then in '06, that was the last time these two point guards met. The Spurs' focal point was not Tony Parker. It was Tim Duncan still. Now it's Tony Parker. And, this is just a vastly different Tony Parker. This guy, this season, his numbers are up across the board. In particular, what I like, and I know Mike likes, his assists are up now, 7.7 a game. And if you take a look at this too, I mean, you look at even Harris has to say it. He goes, yeah, the circumstances are different. He says Parker has developed much more range on his jumper. He's hitting the 18-footer with more regularity.
I mean, he really has. And
Harris is going to have his hands full against Parker. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Parker won't have his hands full against Harris too, because Harris, he plays quite well out in Utah as well. But
look, the question is going to be
interesting
what
to
Harris
see. But I'm going to give the edge on this one to Tony Parker, hands down.
I think I agree with that one. Parker over Harris, especially Parker's having an MVP year, and you guys agree with that point as well?
Yeah, I believe Parker's have a bigger series.
Parker's an MVP candidate. Come on now.
I know, right? Just talked about this before.
Well, he's walking away with the MVP title, right, out there, Humvee?
Yeah, he's going to walk out with it. Forget LeBron and Durant. It's all Tony.
Okay, let's move on to the next few positions. And we've got shooting guard and small forward. At shooting guard, it's Danny Green against Gordon Hayward. And we also have Kawhi Leonard against, it could be any number of players, but right now it looks like it might be DeMar Carroll. Paul, what are your thoughts on that?
As far as Green and Hayward go, I believe it's just a matter of Green's defense versus Hayward's offense. So in the matchups, I don't really see a favorable matchup there. I see them, they both cancel each other out. Hayward's a guy that really has a good amount of a piece of role in Utah's formation on offense. So what he does is he does a lot of things like Reggie Miller used to do, running off screens and getting out in the open court and things like that. And then Green, obviously, when the big three are healthy, he's more of a spot-up shooter from the three-point line. So he's not dependent on to run the pick and roll as far heavily on offense. He's just more of he's going to be there just to stop Hayward. So I think they cancel each other out. As far as Leonard and Carroll go, Leonard, I think he has the favorable matchup because he plays defense. He can score out in the open court. He can hit the jumper every now and then his three-point shot has got a lot better toward the end of the season. Yeah. As for Carroll, he's an athletic guy. He plays defense, but he's pretty much just limited to being a spot-up shooter. Whereas I think Leonard has a real matchup in this small forward position.
Yeah, especially
didn't Gordon say he's going to shock the world? The Jazz are going to actually probably upset the Spurs in this series?
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
Poor choice of words, definitely. So, those are those two matchups, and let's go ahead and move on to the next one, and that's Tim Duncan versus Paul Millsap, and this will probably be moved around just a bit. We'll probably see Al Jefferson, and then move DeJuan Blair onto Millsap, but. This is a really tough one because Al Jefferson is definitely one of the better bigs in the NBA right now. He's a little undersized 6'10" compared to Tim Duncan, but I also have to give some credit to Tim Duncan the way he's been playing to close out the season. And I think if he can stand outside around 16, 18 feet and hit those mid-range jumpers and take Al Jefferson out of his comfort zones, that could be an edge to Duncan. So, it's going to be close, but it'll be a slight edge to Duncan for me.
That's one of the things that you've seen out of Timmy this year is his range really, he made a more concerted effort to take that 16 to 18 footer and knock that jumper down at the top of the key. And it was like every time it went up, I expected it to go down, whereas in years past, you weren't really sure, or it was just another jump shot. But this year, that's one of his big things that he put in his repertoire.
Okay, Hubby, let's talk about, I guess, it would be Blair. Right now on paper, it's Blair Jefferson, but it'll be Blair and Millsap.
Right. Well, if you look Blair Jefferson, that's total mismatch. Yes. I mean, really right now, Al Jefferson is one of those guys that can almost score at will, and you saw him do that against the Suns the other night, and he's just a very, very talented offensive player. But if you look at Millsap, he's kind of DeJuan Blair in the sense that he rebounds a lot, plays defense, except he can stretch the ball out a little bit. Paulie Millsap's one of those real guys that does a lot of little things. He's going to pick up a couple assists a game. He's going to get a lot of rebounds. He's going to shoot a high percentage, and he's going to knock down the occasional three. So I think he's one of those guys that I think will outplay DeJuan. But it's pretty much a push, I think, just because the point that they have in the system is they're going to do exactly what they need from each other for each team is what they're going to do.
I kind of disagree with you there because in 4 games against the Spurs this regular season, now I understand that is the regular season, playoffs are totally different. But if you look at his numbers against San Antonio, they've all come down significantly. He averages about close to 9 rebounds a game. Versus the Spurs, it drops. It drops down to 7.
That right there has to do a lot with Thiago Splitter and now even Boris Diaw starting to play more minutes because they abuse him in the post. As where he has his way against Blair, and I think that if he does, like Hubby said, if Millsap does have a favorable matchup over Blair, then I think Pop will just sit Blair like he did against the Lakers, and if he has to go to Splitter or DL, he'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that option, definitely with Thiago Splitter coming off the bench, especially if we're going to see maybe an Al Jefferson, Paul Millsap, Derek Favors lineup, and I think Corbin's used that before, and they've done really well. So let's just go quickly over bench and coach. I think those are big edge to the Spurs, both of them. Coach is not even close bench, and it's such a deep team. So let's move on to what to watch for, just a few things, quick hitters. I think pick and roll defense for the Jazz. I mean, they're just terrible, defending the pick and roll. And against the Spurs with Tony Parker, that's going to be huge and something to watch out for. Do you guys have any notes on that?
My one thing to watch for, as I wrote in a preview that'll be coming on Project Spurs, is just watching Devin Harris's aggressiveness on offense to keep Tony Parker busy on defense. If Harris is just a guy that feeds the ball to Millsap and Jefferson, then I think Parker's going to have his way with him in the series and have the Jazz on their heels.
Now, my big thing that I want to look out for is the play of my man, Matty Bonner. The best big coming off the bench for the Spurs is Matt Bonner, especially in this series. If you go and you look at one of the things that I like to look at is the plus minus, how much his team is playing over another guy. And when you look at it, Matt Bonner had the highest plus minus outside of Tony and Manu every time that they played against the Utah Jazz this season. I think I wrote the numbers down somewhere. We're going to have it on.
He scored 18 on Utah one game, I believe.
He scored 20 one night. 20, basically won them that game.
That's not a dunk.
And so what I'm saying, I think he dunked that night too. So Matt Bonner is someone who's going to stretch the floor. When you get Favors on the court and you have Matt Bonner, it's going to stretch. Paul Millsap is way more comfortable playing inside. So what's going to happen is it just stretches it out. Tony can get in, Manu can get in. All of a sudden, the floor is a little bit more stretched, whereas someone like Thiago, if he's on the court with Timmy, that's not going to happen. It's actually going to play right into Utah's hands. So I'm saying Matt Bonner is going to be one of those guys that you see in this series play a lot more than a Thiago, than a Boris Diaw, than any of the other bigs that they have down there, possibly even more than a DeJuan Blair.
Jeff, I know you want to talk about the bigs with Utah and their advantage for the Spurs.
Well, if you look at the numbers, you might want to say what advantage that Utah has with the San Antonio Spurs. By now, all Spurs fans are kind of jittery, like, oh my God, another big team. Remember the last time when the Spurs faced a very large team in the playoffs, it was a one series and done. That was against Memphis last year. But if you look at what Millsap did, for example, against the Spurs this season in 4 games, I mentioned before, his numbers kind of dropped versus the Spurs. His field goal percentage drops from 50% to 40%. His rebounds come down by 2. His assists come down almost to nothing, almost like 1 assist. his blocks, and let's forget this the Jazz team, you know, they're one of the better block shot teams in the NBA. His block shots comes down, his points come down from 17 to 11, and his plus minus, that's for you, Humby, right there, drops to a 1.8 while he's on the court. So the Spurs have done an effective job on Millsap. You look at even a guy like Al Jefferson, you know, his rebounds pretty much stay the same. He's not as effective against the Spurs. He pretty much does what he normally does versus any team. About the only thing that he does well against the Spurs is probably block some shots more. His numbers go from a 2 a game to a 3 a game. But his plus-minus actually drops to a 1.8 while he's on the court versus the Spurs. And the same thing with Favors. As a matter of fact, his block shots come down. Rebounding numbers come down against the Spurs. Even his offensive rebounding has dropped to almost to 1 a game. So the Spurs do a very effective job, and that could probably, and I hope it does, kind of calm the nerves of Spurs fans who are still kind of jittery and still worried, getting haunted in memories right now of what the Grizzlies did to the Spurs last season.
All right, well, those are our thoughts on this series starting tomorrow at noon. Our predictions, you can find our full predictions up on ProjectSpurs.com later today, but just a quick one real quick. I've got 5 games. Paul's got the sweep. Humby's got 5 games. Jeff's got it in 5 games. But you can find that and a bunch of other series preview content up on ProjectSpurs.com. Thanks for watching, and we're ready for game 1 tomorrow. See you next week.